to be careful teaching religious studies, especially at a government institution in Texas, right? Because I've got all kinds of students, and I've got students who are atheists, and I've got students who are Jews and Muslims, and I've got lots of students who are very conservative evangelical, and they absolutely believe in the devil, right? And so what I tell them is, look, the devil either exists or he doesn't, right? That's for you to decide based on your own, your own sense of how the world works. But the idea of what the devil is like, humans' understanding of the devil has definitely changed throughout history, and we can track that by looking at ancient texts, right? So if you read the Old Testament, which in religious studies we usually call the Hebrew Bible, but if you read the Old Testament, the devil's pretty much not in it. He's not there, right? So the Christian sort of story is the devil turns into a snake and tricks Eve and then Adam into eating the apple, and this is why we have all the problems in the world today. If you actually look at Genesis 3, it says a talking snake, and it says the snake was the cleverest of all the wild animals. So a plain reading of the text is it's just a talking snake. It's not a normal snake because it can talk, but it's a wild animal. It doesn't say anything about it being a shape-shifted fallen angel or something like that. And then when you really see Satan as a character in the Hebrew Bible is in the book of Job. And the book of Job starts out with God talking to all his angels in heaven, and Satan just walks right on up. And God says, "Hey, Satan, what have you been up to? How have you been doing?" So this doesn't sound like there is some war in heaven, right? Satan seems like he visits heaven all the time and actually works closely with God, right? And if you read the story of the book of Job, Satan's job is to basically test humans and make sure humans are worshiping God and honoring God because that's the right thing to do, and because God is worthy of worship, and not because God will bless them with material riches and wealth. So Satan and God set up this bet about basically torturing God's faithful servant, Job. So Satan means in Hebrew accuser, right? In the sense of like you get a fair trial, but there's going to be a prosecuting attorney who's trying to prove you wrong. Okay, so Satan in the book of Job, he likes God. He's friends with God. He doesn't like people, right? Okay, so fast forward to the New Testament. And now all of a sudden there is seems to be a pretty clear idea of Satan as we know it in Christianity, right? A figure that is sort of the source of all evil, that is at war with God. There are demons everywhere, which there are not in the Hebrew Bible. Jesus and his followers are exorcising these demons left and right. So what happened? How did this change, right? Well, what we think happened is that after the Hebrew Bible was written, Israel was taken over in a series of conquests, right? So first the Babylonians, and then the Persians, and then Alexander the Great, and then the Romans. And so this is a problem because if you are a monotheistic religion, you believe there's only one God in the world, and that God has only one temple in the whole world, which is in Jerusalem. How is it possible that all these pagan armies keep conquering that temple again and again and again? What could possibly explain this, especially if God's all powerful, right? How is this happening? And so what they do is they go back to what we think they did is they go back to the Hebrew Bible and they say, okay, we have this figure in Job who's loyal to God but doesn't like humans. And then they look at Genesis 6. And if you are kind of into comic books and horror and stuff like that, you may have heard of this term Nephilim before, right? So in Genesis 6, it says, the sons of God, which we believe to be a reference to angels, looked down at the daughters of men and saw they were beautiful. And they have offspring. They have these half human, half angel offspring who are giants. And then God sends the flood, right? God says, I'm not putting up with this. I created humans, I created angels. I didn't create these weird giant things. They're not supposed to exist. I'm going to exterminate pretty much all life on Earth. So now they're looking at these two things. So they've got Satan who likes God, doesn't like people, and then they've got these angels, these in Genesis 6, who like people too much, actually. Right? They like people so much they want to marry them, but they disobey God, right? So you put these together and you get Satan as understood in Christianity. Now you get a figure who doesn't like God and doesn't like people, a rebel who wants to destroy all of humanity. And this idea suddenly makes sense because now they can say this is why the temple to God in Jerusalem is controlled by pagan armies, is because Satan has temporarily been given control over the world, right? God is sort of for whatever reason letting Satan run the show for a little while. But now that time is about to end. So that's kind of the beginning of Satan as known in Christianity. And then in the Muslim tradition, Satan is called Iblis, which means in Arabic like the whisperer. And it's a slightly different take on it, right? Iblis refuses to bow down to humans when God sort of creates Adam and says, "This is my greatest creation." Iblis says, "There's no God but God. I'm not going to bow to anything but God," and is punished for this and says, "I'm going to show you, God, that humans are not that great, right? I'm going to tempt them. I'm going to whisper in their ear, and I'm going to make them disobey you, and then you'll realize." That they weren't actually such a great creation after all. So Iblis is a little bit closer to the book of Job in the sense of trying to prove that humans are not as great as God maybe hoped that they were.